Joseph Parker isn't just another heavyweight.
That hand as he tries the right uppercut, which Chisora leans into, and Chisora now is up on the ropes, but Parker is looking for the finish here. Brilliant right hand.
Where most rely on size and raw power, Parker builds his game on fluid movement and incredible timing.
Trying to find the punch.
With every calculated step and angle, he creates a dilemma his opponents struggle to solve. And it's in those overlooked moments of control that he finds his edge. Stick around to learn how Parker has managed to stand face to face with the best heavyweights of his era, using a simple system you can begin applying right away. One of the most devastating ways to score a knockout is often called the intercepting counter, or collision punch. Essentially, it's when a punch and an opponent's movement collide. Instead of just the force of one fighter's shot, you get the added momentum of two bodies meeting head-on, sort of like a car crash. We all know that if you draw an opponent into your strike, the result can be fight-ending. And in the heavyweight division, where every collision carries even more destructive potential, Joseph Parker has built a style that maximizes this exact opportunity. And speaking of opportunities, Joseph Parker has a massive one in front of him against Fabio Wardley on Saturday, October 25th, live exclusively on DAZN pay-per-view. This can't-miss clash between Parker and Wardley has a ton on the line. Both come in as interim champions, and the winner will likely take on Alexander Usyk for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. Wardley enters this fight after an unusual journey that saw him pick up the gloves at 20, and split his time between the ring and a recruitment consultancy. He stated that this path has taken him one punch away from fighting for the world title. He's clearly got a stoppage in mind for this one. Of course, the heavyweight standouts want to make a statement, and they both have the power to do it, judging by their combined 95% KO ratio. So, if you want to catch this pivotal heavyweight rumble, you should tune in on October 25th, live and only on DAZN pay-per-view. Now, back to the video. Joseph Parker's intercepting counters aren't just as simple as catching opponents as they come in. He forces them into a dilemma: either get hit or give ground. To elaborate, his system works whether the stances are matched or mirrored, and he applies it with the same precision each time. With matched stances, where both fighters have the same lead leg forward, Parker dictates the movement. If he wants to force his opponent towards his lead hook in mid-range, he'll threaten a rear hand straight, making the move away from the punch, right into his lead hook. If his opponent drifts by themselves towards Parker's lead side, then great, they just made it even easier for him by walking there on their own. On the other hand, if they move towards his rear side, he punishes them with his signature rear overhand, or straight. And when they're not willing to oblige on their own, Parker uses jabs and a slapping lead hook to herd them into that lane until suddenly they've walked themselves right into the shot he's been waiting for. In a mirrored stance matchup where fighters face off with opposite lead legs, the system may work even better. Watch here as Parker pressures from the rear side, cutting off his opponent's lane and forcing him to circle towards his own lead side. What the opponent doesn't see is that this lines him up perfectly for Parker's jaw-crushing lead hook. But in this instance, it comes straight down the pipe, almost like a jab, just from a sharper angle. Then, in this fight with former WBO interim title holder Big Bang Zhang, Parker pivots to his rear side as he throws the overhand, while Zhang is turning to face him. This catches Zhang squared up with nowhere to go but backwards, and Parker owns the ring again. Of course, one shot alone doesn't usually finish the job at this level. That's why Parker constantly weaves in setups. Sometimes lead hand into rear hand, other times rear hand into lead. Take this mirrored stance example. Parker halts Zhang's movement by throwing a lead hook that freezes him with high hands, leaving a gap straight down the middle for the rear hand. Then he reruns it, this time stepping slightly to his rear side to open the angle for a crushing rear hand body hook. For matched stances, check out his fight against Anthony Joshua. Joshua tries to cut him off by stepping towards his own rear side, but Parker times it, meeting the step with a lead hook. The punch forces AJ to switch directions, walking himself into Parker's rear straight. Now that we've covered the strengths and opportunities that come from his system, we need to acknowledge the other side of the coin, the potential drawbacks. No system in fighting is complete without risk, but elite fighters deal in controlled chaos. They choose when and how they accept risks, and whether the reward is worth it. A potential problem for Parker's style is that it needs to be on point until the final bell, if it goes that long. After all, a system built on interceptions relies on timing and angles, so if the opponent doesn't enter the trap, or if Parker himself steps in too square, the danger flips back onto him, kind of like an Uno reverse card. A good example of this comes from his fight against former heavyweight champion Andy Ruiz Jr. Here, Parker tries to bait Ruiz towards his rear side, away from the slapping lead hook he's throwing, but instead of maintaining the mid-range space where his intercepting counter punches thrive, Parker smothers himself into short range. Ruiz doesn't bite on the trap and holds his ground, and Parker leaves himself in prime position for a cracking overhand. This moment highlights the risk. If you get impatient and force the action instead of letting the exchange play out, you're the one out of position and in serious danger. So remember, if your opponent refuses to move into your intercepting counters, that's okay. That's still part of the system. If they don't walk into the trap, you just keep feeding them the setup punch you were using to steer them. The beauty of Parker's system is the dilemma exists either way. If they move, they collide. If they don't, you just keep tagging them until they have to. Now that we've addressed that perceivable weakness, let's get something straight. This style won't work for a stationary fighter. If you expect to glue your feet to the floor and let them do all of the work, you've earned yourself a 50-50 fight. At heavyweight especially, those odds are dangerous. Standing still is what makes you hittable. Movement is what stacks the percentages in your favor. Always remember that when you force them to reface you, reset their feet, and adjust to your angles, those 50-50 odds shift in your favor. This is precisely why Parker almost always ties his punches to his feet. The side he's striking from is the same side he's stepping toward, subtly turning the ring into a funnel. Here, Parker pours it on a stunned opponent. He notices the low lead hand, then begins feeding the lead hook. Each hook makes the opponent's head slip away, seemingly safe. But he steps with it. Every lead hook, a slight shift to the lead side, then back off angle to the rear side. And suddenly, that safe movement becomes the worst possible choice. The system works, but only because Parker moves his feet with his hands. Here, like many more of his fights, he uses the lead hook as a steering wheel, whereas the rear hand is the wrecking ball. But the beauty of the system is, both his lead hand and his rear hand can play either role. At its core, Parker's system creates a dilemma. Avoid one side, and you walk straight into the other. Refuse to move, and you'll just keep getting hit or being forced back. Either way, Parker dictates the pace and controls the ring, turning movement into pressure and pressure into opportunities. Sure, there are risks, but when done correctly, this approach allows him to take command even against elite operators. In short, by owning the space, the pace, and the choices, Parker proves you don't have to be the biggest man in the ring to beat giants. For the modern martial artist, this has been Coby McKinley, wishing you happy training. And again, If you want to watch Joseph Parker take on Fabio Wardley, catch it on October 25th, live and exclusively on DAZN.